As you might recall, Yehuda Ferris of Chabad of the East Bay became the trustee of a cancer patient's trust. The cancer patient left 3 elderly Jewish siblings as beneficiaries in his trust, and he left his half interest in a $2 million house at 1810 Grant Street in Berkeley, and he left 25% of his half of the house to his 3 siblings to be split amongst them as elderly Jewish poor siblings. The man's brother took care of him for 6 years straight, from the time he was diagnosed with 6 months to live in 2014 until he passed away in 2020. His own daughters, Filipino daughters, never converted to Judaism, never spoke to the cancer patient once in the entire 6 years of his terminal illness. So in other words, he had 2 daughters, and when he got diagnosed with 6 months to live, every 6 months for 6 years, he never heard one single word from his daughters. And who did Yehuda Ferris of Chabad of the East Bay sell his entire half interest in a $2 million house to for $82,000? To his own daughters. So in other words, Yehuda Ferris, who's a convert, he's born from Reform families, sells $1 million worth of real estate to the man's 2 daughters for $82,000, even though the irrevocable trust says that they can't get but 50%. They can only get 25% each of his half. But he turned around and sold them the whole thing for $82,000. But the whole thing is worth $1 million because the whole house is worth $2 million. If I haven't lost your attention. So now, if that wasn't bad enough, then Yehuda Ferris goes along and says, the trust will take the inheritance from the brother who took care of him for 6 years and use that inheritance money to pay for his eviction from the house where he was living with his brother the last year of his life before he died. So here I want to read from that settlement agreement. It says, contingent duty of trust to share part of court costs and attorney's fees incurred for evicting the cancer patient's brother. I'm not going to mention the name. The parties hereby acknowledge that the brother of the cancer patient and a trust beneficiary has occupied the property rent-free since the death of the cancer patient, and he presently continues to occupy the property. Why is he there? Because Yehuda Ferris and his Sufi attorney told him to stay there for 2.5 years after the brother passed away. He encouraged him to stay there. He said, stick around, don't leave, we're going to get you a settlement. But then he turned around 2.5 years later, in the middle of the COVID pandemic in May of 2022, and said, well, you better leave immediately or we're going to charge you 2.5 years rent and get you disinherited. And the guy says to Yehuda Ferris, well, where am I supposed to go? You got some advance money for me? No, just go live out in the street, penniless, at 63 years old. Anyhow, so then he carried out his threat. And it says, the parties agree that Mr. Ferris, as trustee of the trust, shall file with the court and pursue to its conclusion a second amended petition, the substance of which is set forth in agreement paragraph 8. It being the intent of the parties that Mr. Ferris, as trustee on the one hand, and the ex-girlfriend and the 2 daughters, who never saw the cancer patient in 6 years, on the other hand, share equally in the attorney's fees and costs associated with evicting the brother, who took care of his own brother for 6 years and gave up 3 jobs his whole career, provided the court resolves the second amended petition in favor of the trustee's right to apply the brother's beneficial share, his inheritance, of the cost of the brother's eviction from the property. Then the daughter, who never saw their father in 6 years, and the mother and the other daughter shall be entitled to receive from the funds of the brother who took care of his brother for 6 years, held in trust, such amounts up to the amount thereof sufficient to pay the mother, the ex-girlfriend, the daughter who never saw her father in 6 years, and the other daughter who never saw her father in 6 years, contributing to his death, obviously, for 50% the cost and attorney's fees incurred pursuing an eviction action against the brother. In such events, trust payment of the above cost shall become due and payable within 30 days of Yehuda Ferris having provided proof of expense incurred. The parties acknowledge and agree that the trustee is seeking an order from the court charging the brother's beneficial share of the trust with all fees the trustee has incurred and will incur through his Muslim attorney, William J. Rogers, Sufi Muslim attorney, related to the eviction of the brother, as well as to any and other and all disputes between Yehuda Ferris, the trustee, and the brother. As used therein, the term other disputes shall mean all disputes between the brother and trustee, including, but not limited to, the brother's petition, all his protests in the probate court, to fight and say, wait a second, you sold my brother's house, my brother's half of a $2 million house for $82,000, and you don't expect me to go to court? So it says, but not limited to the brother's petition to contest trust. The parties further acknowledge and agree that the trustee is seeking an order from the court charging the brother's beneficial share of the trust estate with one half of the costs and costs incurred evicting the brother, with such payments from Yehuda Ferris as trustee being contingent upon the availability of funds at all in the brother's beneficial share of the trust. I mean, have you ever heard of anything as disgusting as this? I mean, seriously, think about it. The guy takes care of his brother for 6 years. The brother has cancer. He gets back in his house a year before he died. Wherever his brother went, he went. He was taking care of him medically, clinically, emotionally, all levels, blood pressure checks, sitting at the hospital so he wouldn't get transferred to a nursing home, calling the doctor, adjusting the medication, cooking the food, driving for him, being his friend, when his own daughters totally abandoned him. Then they're living together in the house because his brother invited him into his own house, and he wrote a trust and it said, you and your sisters get 25% of my share of my half of the $2 million house, 1810 Grant Street, Berkeley. Look it up. It's $2 million. Okay. And then he's there, and then he passes away a year later in ICU, not in a nursing home where he would have been if the brother hadn't been taking care of him. Then he passes away, and now the brother's still living at the house. COVID shuts down the world. Yehuda Ferris and his Sufi Muslim lawyer says, stick around. We don't want you to leave. We'll make a deal. They even went to the court and said, he's such a nice guy. We don't want to kick him out. Hey, judge, is it legal for him to be kicked out? And then suddenly, out of nowhere, in the middle of the pandemic, 2.5 years later, get the hell out immediately, or else we're gonna kick you out, and you're not going to get a penny of your inheritance. And the guy says, well, where am I supposed to go? I'm 63 years old. I've been living here a year with my brother and 2.5 by myself. Do you have any money for me? You're going to give me $10,000 or $20,000 to go find a place to live while you work out the legal details of our inheritance? No, just get out. If you don't get out, we're going to disinherit you and charge you attorney's fees. So what did they do? They turned around and sold the brother's half of the house illegally to the daughters for $80,000, but the irrevocable trust says that they can only get half. And then the Yehuda Ferris's wife sends the guy a text saying, well, we didn't really sell the house, but if we can get you out of there, we're going to fix it up and put it on the market. But the settlement agreement between the cancer patient and his ex-girlfriend is that the house can't be sold in either of their lifetimes. So then what does he do? He sells the property, and then the brother gets an eviction action against him. And a year later, it finally goes through. Now the brother has a 7-year eviction on his record, thanks to Yehuda Ferris, who sleeps every night in a $4 million mansion by the Claremont Hotel, and who just bought with his wife a $1 million mansion in Martha's Vineyard, as well as another $1 million house in Berkeley. And that's the least that we know. And we know that the wife inherited an incredible real estate empire from her late parents. So this is how the rich, so-called Chabad Lubavitch Yehuda Ferris of the East BA is a parasite, and the brother is starving, doesn't have any money or food, neither does his sisters. So shame on this man who is a fraudulent individual, and he's committing financial abuse against the elderly, real estate fraud, you name it.